Welcome to the show. It's Thursday, July 10th. And as always, we start off with a little message from our sponsors.
Our nation is standing up for American workers, restoring the pride of making products here at home. That's what we do every day. We're America's beverage companies, making American products with American workers in America's hometowns, delivering brands that have been enjoyed for generations, creating good-paying jobs, the kind that require only a strong work ethic. Because we believe in the promise of America and the people who make it great.
Today's episode is brought to you by one of our sponsors, the American Beverage Association. You guys have been seeing these videos that have been playing for the past couple of weeks. A lot of people are talking American jobs these days, which is great, but our friends at America's Beverage Companies have been walking the walk this whole time, providing good-paying jobs, the kind that only require a strong work ethic. Jobs that make it possible to raise a family, put down roots, and build a future. They always have been and always will be American companies making American products with American workers all across this great country. 275,000 American workers across all 50 states show up every day and put in an honest day's work to help make America great at America's beverage companies. Learn more at wedeliverforamerica.org. That's wedeliverforamerica.org. All right, we've got a really, really interesting show tonight. I have known about the Falun Gong for a long time because a friend of mine in DC is a practitioner. And I really respect these guys and all of the work that they do, and all of, they have been probably one of the most, if not the most, oppressed faith and organization in the world because of the Chinese government constantly going after them. So I'm going to bring in here Ben Maloney, Director of Digital Outreach. I should make them the same size as me for the Falun Dafa Information Center. And Lishai Lamish, who has emceed how many Shenyang performances have you emceed now?
I think it's about close to 2,000. I lost track a while ago.
That is wild. I mean, do you guys ever take a break from being on tour? Because I think you're in every town all the time.
I'm on break right now. I'm at home. So we take a break from around May until December, but it goes like that.
We may have crossed paths, I believe, in Tampa. The entire team was staying at the same hotel that I was staying at. And when we went to leave, it was just like 3 buses or something all at once.
What year was that? Was that just now?
Last year.
Oh, that was my group then. Because see, we have 8 groups that tour at the same time, but I was in Tampa. So yeah, we have 2 buses and a truck, and it's just like a bunch of Chinese looking people, very fit looking people with identical outfits and suitcases. But if you get in line and you see a line of us, they'll let you go first.
No, I don't care. I don't care. And I know that they're all hardworking entertainers. And so like they're probably not necessarily exhausted, but probably exhausted all the time, because that's a heck of a performance. And I've never caught a show, but just looking at what I've seen from it, it looks like probably one of the most intense performances and one of the most physically straining performances that anybody could participate in. Let's start here. I mean, can we talk about just the oppression from the Chinese government? I know I've seen interviews with you before, Alicia, and Ben, you can weigh in on this too. However you guys want to go back and forth, we can have this conversation openly. The Chinese government actually harasses theaters you guys go to?
Yeah, so I can pick that up, and then Ben, you can kind of go further back in the background with this. So yeah, so you have a situation, you're in DC, right? Just now in February, we were performing at the Kennedy Center, and we're getting ready to start the show. It's 10:45 in the morning, and all of a sudden the fire alarm goes off. And we say, okay, it's a fire drill. We'll walk out. We're setting up. We got time. And then the guy comes over to security speaker, and he says, this is not a drill. Evacuate immediately. And they get us all out of the building. And Kennedy Center is this huge complex, right? You got like 5 different buildings, multiple. There are like 6 different orchestras performing there. And the way that they're rushing us outside is like there's an active live shooter or a bomb or something like that. They're very serious, and they walk us out. It's 20 degrees outside. We go all the way around to this other building out there, and nobody knows what's going on. And then I asked the stage manager to talk to the theater. I say, is this about us? Because we've gotten bomb threats. And I say, no, we think it's something Trump related, blah, 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 because he just took over the board, whatever. Nope. They got an email threatening a bomb against Shenyang. And the threat was basically, if you allow Shenyang to perform, we'll turn this place to rubble. And this was one of 50-something ones like that we got on tour just this past tour in 6 months. We're going to come in and shoot everybody. We're going to throw your kids off of buildings. We're going to kill congressmen who support you guys and leave their bodies on the streets of Washington. Now, these are obviously pranks. They're scare tactics, but you have to take them very seriously. So, Metro Police came in, Park Police came in. We were out for 3 hours, all hundreds of people, not just Shenyun, hundreds and hundreds of directors, orchestra members, all these different companies out in the cold for 3 hours. Finally, we got back in, set up for the show, and then did a 12-show run in Washington. There was no bomb. They had the canines, the sniff dogs, everything, no problem. But this is basically the latest iteration in what has now been 19 years of the Chinese Communist Party trying to stop Shenyun. And to understand why they try to do that, you got to go back to how Shenyun Performing Arts was started by Falun Gong practitioners. And then to understand why that matters, maybe you go to Ben and kind of give a bit of background on how that came to be.
I'd love to get this because again, like, and I had a friend who was a practitioner, and I don't get it. Why is it such a? Why does the Chinese Communist Party hate you so much?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, I feel like for most Americans, they're like walking halfway into a movie, you know? And you walk in the room and someone's watching a movie, and you're like, wait, what's going on here? Like, what's
Yeah.
the plot? I don't kind of what is going on here. And I think, the Chinese Communist Party themselves is just a totalitarian government, full control, right? Control of the internet, control of your thoughts, everything. And, they've, for the past almost 100 years, they've, killed 80 million people and full control, right? So that's who they are. And then in 1999, or basically, if you go back, there's this like, they're against all spirituality, basically, right? They had to destroy all that to replace it with communism. So that's a problem for them. But in the 90s, when Falun Gong was introduced to the public in 92, and just for the viewers, Falun Gong is a Qigong, Buddhist-based meditation practice that involves slow-moving exercises and the tenets of truthfulness, compassion, tolerance. So
Oh.
good thing. Even the Chinese government thought it was good. So from 92 to 99, you have 100 million people practicing. And 1 out of every 13 people in China is practicing, which is like crazy. Basically, the short of that is that the government felt it was a threat to their power. There's more people than they are in the Chinese Communist Party. You have a despot at the time, Jiang Zemin, who starts this persecution campaign in 99 against 100 million of his own citizens. For the past 26 years, that's been, mass jailings, torture, killing, a lot of really horrific things, forced organ harvesting. We can get into those. But basically, that's what they did in China. That's what they've done in China. So why do they care about a dance group, for instance, or what's going on with this in America? Like that sounds really sad that that's happening in China, but what does that have to do with me? Well, the thing is that over the past 26 years, as they've been doing that, Falun Gong practitioners in the United States and 120 countries around the world have just been practicing. Yeah. And Shenyun's been incredibly successful because it shows this China before communism. It's, a very high quality show in all the major theaters, and also shows modern China. So shows the persecution. So basically, Falun Gong practitioners have been very effective in raising awareness about what the Chinese Communist Party is doing. And so they don't like that for a variety of reasons, mostly because they're guilty of crimes against humanity. And so in 2022, there was this secret meeting where Xi Jinping came out and said, you have not done enough. And basically like complained, like Falun Gong has not been crushed globally. And this is kind of how they talk and think. And so I need you to do more. And so what we need to do, and he basically set out an approach that's like based on lawfare, based on media disinformation, based on spies, and obviously based on these violent threats Li Shai is talking about. And so it's a little bit more holistic than just kind of some random people emailing, a theater here and there. It's more of a holistic strategy by the CCP.
When we get into this stuff, I mean, I was shocked, and I think it's finally, I don't know if it's finally banned from America or what, but the Body Worlds exhibit, not long ago. That's when I first kind of heard about Falun Gong and the real oppression of the Chinese, what the CCP does. I mean, actually horrifying when you dug into it. And I think finally 2020 might have done an expose on it, and it got, I don't know if it's banned or it's still floating around, but it's horrible. I remember going in as a student back, I want to say high school or middle school, and seeing the display or whatever, the tour of that, and when you find out who it is, it's a nightmare. And I'm sad that I went to go and paid money to go see that. It's horrifying.
Isn't it almost surreal?
Yeah.
That these things are happening. Like, I feel like for Americans, because, we all grew up here. It's like we live in this society where it's like you can't understand the Chinese Communist Party fully. Even me, I've been at this almost 20 years. It's really hard to understand that somebody would take basically what you're talking about, take the body of a dissident that they basically murdered, and then profit from that body through this body's exhibit or other ways, right? Like that's like no, that's like a weird horror movie that can't be happening, but it is happening.
Yeah, it's shocking to me. Now, I know one of the topics that we wanted to cover, bringing you guys in, is like when you take a look at the CCP, what they're doing, their grip with TikTok and what they've done to manipulate the world with TikTok, horrifying. I don't think people realize the extent. And again, like you said, it's like a horror movie, and it's so hard because again, we've had it so good in America for so long, for our heads to kind of wrap around just how nefarious, just how disgusting the CCP regime is. By the way, can't wait for my death threats now. But because they're gonna come,
you'll get some trolls in the comments for sure.
Yeah, no, look, I actually my comments are usually pretty good.
Okay.
But like I again, to say what I just said, we have it so good, we don't understand what it's like to actually have any kind of faith or any kind of organization truly oppressed by a government to the point that they're kidnapping people, that they're murdering people, that they're harvesting their organs, like horrifying stuff. But TikTok in particular, they're trying to manipulate the world with that, right?
Yeah, so I would say TikTok's probably the biggest Trojan horse ever in history. And it's basically a soft power weapon for the Chinese Communist Party. So why is it a soft power weapon? I know there's like a lot of fans out there probably because
Yeah.
150 million users in the US. So I don't know if babies are using it or something, but 150 million users, only 300 million Americans. So huge populace. And so what is it really? It's owned by a company called ByteDance, and ByteDance is a Chinese company. And in China, what people have to understand in China, it's not like America where you're like, you have a board of directors, you have like a company. No. They have a board of CCP members in ByteDance that make decisions for ByteDance that are in the company and making sure that everything happens. National security law, they control all the data, they get access to all the data. There's no separation here. So that's true for ByteDance. So now when it comes to this TikTok, well, what do we know? Well, we know from leaked internal documents from TikTok themselves that they had internal content moderation guidelines that said Tibet, Taiwan, Falun Gong was the highest. You censor all of that, and anything that's against the Chinese Communist Party, basically you censor. And then even after that, they had leaked recordings that from TikTok employees that said, "Hey, China can see everything." So you have a data access issue, and then you have a content issue. So beyond just the Falun Gong issue, people might say, "Okay, well, they're just censoring that religious group," but I don't practice Falun Gong. I don't see that content. Maybe it's not big of a deal. No, it's not just that. They promote Marxist agenda. They promote like the sexual content. They promote drugs. They promote everything. And go check what they're doing on their social media app in China. They're promoting mathematics and science and what they would consider Marxist patriotism. So the point is that that's a weapon, and they use it like a weapon.
Yeah, no, I remember taking a look at. I got banned from TikTok very early on. I had a couple of viral videos. They banned me as quick as possible. But I remember looking at my friend's teenager had it on his phone, and he was getting all sorts of trans stuff on it, like constantly. Trans stuff, and that is designed. It's part of a psyop too, right? To kind of weaken our society, weaken everybody down, make everybody more divided, right?
Right. It sounds like a conspiracy theory if you just kind of put it out there on its own. But if you start to connect the dots between all the different things that the CCP has its hands in,
yeah.
So look at the stuff that they're doing, right? They're producing fentanyl and helping get it into the country, and they're ruining hundreds of thousands of families and killing military-age males primarily. They're money laundering through that with the Mexican cartels back in China, so making money off of that as well. Then there's the agricultural purchases, right? And then the spying and the IP theft. And then you have all these R&D, basically capturing American companies' best technology and then kicking the company back out of the country. And you have the Confucius Institutes that are trying to tell us what to think and not to think about China. And then you have people like this guy, Neville Roy Singham, supporting the riots in Los Angeles through his socialist organization, and he's based in China. You look at all these different things, and of course, you look at how they're trying to control Hollywood and any depiction of China in Hollywood. But it's not just how China is portrayed. Like obviously, like Ben mentioned, all those top subjects in China that are the 5 poisons that nobody's allowed to talk about in China, they're going to censor that outside. Same with the Confucius Institutes, same with an event like Shenyun. But beyond that, they have an agenda that goes back to really the communist movement. And there's a book by Skousen talking about the strategy of the communist movement. This was written about 50 something years ago. and lays out all these strategies. And one of them, number 42, is to basically create chaos within American society and make it look like it's organic, when in fact it's all being mobilized by the communist movement. And so the people think that the Cold War basically came to an end when the Berlin Wall came down and the Soviet Union collapsed, but it just basically shifted its nucleus to Beijing, and it's taken on a different form. And what they want to do is nothing short of export the CCP's version of a regime to the rest of the world. And there's documents from military speeches by top generals in China 20 years ago, 30 years ago, saying, listen, we don't have enough natural resources in China for our population. We have to sooner or later take control of the United States, of Canada, of Australia. And so you have something like TikTok. Not only are you censoring the stuff about China, you're also trying to make everybody dumb by watching cat videos and all these other information that just basically turns our brain to mush. Whereas in China, they're promoting the STEM programs and things like that. And that's just one part of the whole strategy. And when you see it, you basically start to question any news item that comes from China. And you start to wonder when American media, like the New York Times, for example, writes articles that makes the Chinese Communist Party super happy. You start to wonder, are people on the take? Did it have people who've infiltrated? Have they just done a really good job getting their narrative out? Are they doing information laundering that is leaving crumbs of information for people to pick up? Right? Because everything is so orchestrated. So in Shenyang, we've seen that, and I think Ben has seen that just more broadly with the Falun Gong community. We've had a front row seat to all this stuff. I was in Congress in 2002 testifying about what we now call transnational repression, about how the Chinese Communist Party is using its oppression mechanisms here in the US, breaking into people's homes and stealing only laptops, beating people on the streets of San Francisco and New York, spying on people, recording conversations back on people's answering machines, back when we had answering machines at home, doing all these things. That was 2002. And we said, if you don't do something about this to stop what they're doing in Falun Gong now, it's going to go to other groups. Mm-hmm. And we said the same thing when it came time for organ harvesting. We were talking about this 2006, 2007, 2008. We're saying Falun Gong practitioners, people like Ben and myself who were arrested for meditating, or like yourself, arrested for having a podcast or speaking their mind, are become prisoners of conscience and then become reverse on-demand organ donors, unwilling donors who are killed on demand when an official with a matching blood type and tissue type needs their organ. Those are the people that are now being killed. We don't know how many. Some people estimate 60 to 90,000 a year. And if you don't say something about this, all these doctors who took the Hippocratic Oath, if you don't do something about this, it's going to go to other groups. And sure enough, a few years later, we see the Uyghurs being rounded up, and all the males in their late 20s start disappearing.
Yep.
So we've really seen how this has gone from what seems like just the issue of a few, Chinese people who are standing on the corner of the street, maybe showing you a flyer about what's happening in China, to really something that is coming into our homes, into our schools, into our families, and certainly in our pockets, on our devices, and our TV screens here in America for everybody.
You hit so many talking points here that I want to get to, because Never Singham. I had a guy on last night, David Kate, who has dug into the funding of protesters because he sees the same protesters everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, what is the mentality of a millionaire who leaves their country to go and retire in China? That just doesn't seem normal to me. That doesn't seem like something that any millionaire would ever want to do.
Well, he's not just a millionaire.
But it's not even just that. It's like, again, like I feel like people get these breadcrumbs, to use Li Shai's term, and then they're like, oh, that one thing. And it's like, wait a second, actually, this is just part of their United Front Group strategy, really. It's all it is. And it's like, so we got one guy, but they're funding tons of stuff. Like even you wanted to, Shenyang is an example, outside Lincoln Center this year, they have all these protesters that are there. And some of them aren't Chinese, they're like African-American. So they interview them. And they interview one of them, and the guy's like, yeah, I was supposed to get $200. And then they basically trace that back to the United Front organization. And then we've done that. We've seen when the ambassador has paid people in previous protests for Falun Gong. So it's like, this is just a strategy. And they use these front organizations, whatever they're called, they have these names, or it's direct to do these things or be mouthpieces. And I think what people have to realize too, because having been in this a long time, Li Shai has been in this, people will be like, oh, you're like a China hawk, or like, you're like, it's like, oh, you're always talking about the China thing. And it's like, no, like really, it's a big deal. And when we talked about organ harvesting, people did say, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. There's no way. There's no way that's happening." We're like, listen, I'm not telling you how much it is, but I'm telling you that we know people that have come out of Chinese labor camps and they've been tortured, and yet they're getting eye tests and blood tests. And it's like, well, why is that happening? And then we start to see like liver transplants 10x the year that Falun Gong gets persecuted in the millions. And so we put that together, and then they have this like big London tribunal where they really look at it and examine the evidence, and then everyone says, okay, this is happening. At what scale is it happening? And so when we start talking about this, I think what your viewers should understand is China's at war with us.
Yeah.
They're in unrestricted war with us, and we're like 100 years behind them in terms of strategy and understanding what is even happening. And Falun Gong and Shenyun are like a really good test case to kind of expose this, because people think of war as like, we go send tanks there. And I'm like, that's not what they think of as war. It's totally different.
It's fentanyl. It's all this stuff.
Yeah. Why waste? Why lose lives when you can just put some stuff on the internet and push it out on everybody's cell phone? I mean, that was the whole thing when everybody got very upset about the spy balloon that slowly, that the Biden administration let go across America.
Yeah.
Like at the time, I think that the stat was like 80 or 90 million people have TikTok on their phones. They really don't need that spy balloon when everybody's got every bit of access to your cell phone is being handed over to the CCP. I mean, again, I don't think people realize, and it's so weird because, like you said, it's very much so like a horror movie, and we've had it so good in this country, people just aren't paying attention to this stuff. So when you testified in 2002, did Congress listen to you or did they write you off?
Yeah, well, eventually they passed a resolution. It was 304, it was 605. Eventually they passed it in the House. But I want to pick up on this term that Ben threw out there, the China Hawk label, right? Yeah. China Hawk, you're a neocon, you're China basher. That's one we've heard before. Yeah, I came into this field not knowing almost anything at all about human rights in China. I was interested in Chinese culture. I was interested in Chinese language and in meditation. And then so I studied Chinese history and I studied the language. And then I eventually studied international relations because I knew about what's happening in China. My job with Shenyun is every night talking about the beauty of Chinese civilization. I'm introducing the Monkey King and the Tang Dynasty and their beautiful costumes. I'm talking about Chinese instruments and all this stuff. It's all a celebration of what China was once like. And the people around me in Shenyun and certainly in our community, they're 90% plus ethnic Chinese. And you should hear how they talk about what's happening in China today. They call the culture their party culture, as in Chinese Communist Party culture. And they say that you can't trust anybody there. You have multiple generations of people who've just been raised with this regime that's basically making people live in fear and every man for himself. You don't have win-win situations. It's all about backstabbing and advancing and getting on the good graces of the party and staying out of trouble. So what I would say in terms of China being at war with us is that I would put it this way. I would say that Americans and Chinese people have the same enemy, the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah.
They think of what they've gone through. Ben mentioned 80 million people, right? There were like 40 million people who were starved and because of a policy that Mao Zedong put in place. And everybody thought it was just their own village because they weren't allowed to know what's happening across the country. And then the Cultural Revolution, you're not allowed to talk about traditional culture. You have to beat up your parents on the street and turn in your teachers. And then the Tiananmen massacre and Falun Gong and all the way to the stuff happening today. Now, those people are the ones who really, really suffered. And of course, if the CCP has its way, it'll be the same over here too, right?
I mean, it's what they're doing. When you take a look at with transing kids and what's happening with the government in California, where they've started to say, hey, we can take your kids away if you don't identify what your children want to identify as. It's a 1-for-1. I've had I don't know if you're familiar with Xi Van Fleet. I've had her on my show many times talking about escaping the Chinese Communist Party, and she's like, it's literally what I lived through at some point. And
culture. It feels like the Cultural Revolution all over again to them.
It does. I think one of the things that's very interesting, and my buddy who's a practitioner, and we knew each other through the press club in DC when I was the young member chair of the National Press Club. The Washington Post was in talking about how China's this threat and whatever else. And my buddy got up, and I might have cheered out loud when he asked this question. He goes, "Hey, if you think there's such a threat, why do you publish the China Daily on the weekends?"
And or China Watch paid inserts too. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Literally taking money directly from them to push direct propaganda, not even hiding it, direct propaganda. I went to the website last night of the China Daily or China Watch, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
and they have like Xi's favorite moments or something in the corner, and they've got him looking like happy with like all sorts of like bright colors around. I'm like, yo, he's like a dictator. Like what? And our multiple. It wasn't just. It was the New York Times. It was the Washington Post. I'm sure it was multiple other.
Wall Street Journal
had it. Multiple papers around the world, and they had a series of articles attacking Shen Yun. And if you don't know, if you don't do what you did, which is actually be like, hey, wait a minute, where's this from? You think this is the Washington Post with an article saying Shen Yun propaganda masquerading as performing arts. I think that was their title.
Yeah,
a lot of people just bought it as news from the Washington Post.
And you didn't even have to disclose that. It was only a few years ago that people had to disclose their financial ties. So, I mean, it's all of those people, though, like to your point, I mean, I don't want to attack singular entities, but to be honest with you, they all wanted to get into China.
Yeah.
And they all wanted a China desk and a Beijing desk when the Beijing desk actually existed before they kicked them all out to Korea. And they all did. I mean, you have to do the deals. Anyone that's like, I'll put it this way. I know you're big on Twitter. So if you see someone in Twitter that's like Western journalist based in Beijing or based in China, and they're saying something, what that means is they are walking that line.
Yeah.
Because they have to walk that line. And so nothing that I don't feel anything. You would think, hey, you're there, you're more credible. Actually, if you're there, you're less credible.
What was her name? Didi Tatlow, right? She was a journalist.
Didi Tatlow. Yeah. Didi Tatlow was for the New York Times, right? So it's for organ harvesting for a second. So she was one of the senior journalists for the New York Times. This is back in the day. She gets this information about organ harvesting, right? And she's on the China desk. And she's like, this is crazy. I want to cover this. She testified this in the London Tribunal on forced organ harvesting, where they found that Falun Gong were the main victims. And she says, when I go to my editors, they squashed it. And they made disparaging remarks about Falun Gong.
Wouldn't let us do the story.
This was,
I mean, come on.
Did you guys, I don't know, I'm sure you saw it because you follow it very closely. Did you ever see the episode of South Park when they were talking about how films get made in China?
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy to me. And that was all based off of, and I didn't know about, and like, again, I've been waking up to this stuff. Obviously I had my friend, and then I've paid attention through the years, but it took a lot for me to wake up and then kind of shake my head clear of like the concept that a large world government can behave this way. But I know with like Disney movies, I know with certain casting, I know they redid, what was it, a whole scene in Iron Man. They had Chinese doctors save Tony Stark instead of the just whatever mix of doctors that they had, so that they could.
Doctor Strange, he couldn't be a Tibetan.
Oh yeah.
The explosions can't be on the Great Wall. Just so many.
You can't put a Taiwan flag on the back of Maverick's, jacket, stuff like that. Yeah.
Who can forget John Cena's apology in Mandarin, which was the most embarrassing thing that I can't believe he got away with. But again, when we have a news cycle like this, you don't pay attention to this stuff and you don't keep track of it. When he did that apology, it was like, what is going on here? And
it's all money, right? Like what has always been so interesting to me is you have a lot of people that, like, when the Russia stuff comes out or something, like, Ukraine war, and they'll say we're boycotting Russia. And sometimes I feel like it's like saying an apple is, like, doesn't have some ingredient in it. It's like, that doesn't have anything to do with anything. Like, you're marketing. What about your relationship with China? And it's like people aren't willing to really go there, right? So to your point on John Cena, it's like, of course, because he has business relationship.
Yeah, probably getting a lot of money, and now he's got his little promotion, and he's going to be in DC. He's got more and more DC things. Probably he knew what was coming down the pipe, and you have these big media executives, because what doesn't China account for almost like half of most of the profit for a lot of these big films? Isn't that kind of?
It's not even just like, hey, we want to get in the China market. They're actually funding the studios, and they own a lot of the theaters now. And so, what's always been really interesting to me, this is like a little bit of an aside, but illustrates it. Even to this day, look at all these like spy series and all these series that are out. They're all Cold War, even to now. So it's all like Russia, and it's like, when do you see a China one? But like, China actually has the real spies. Like, there's a spy in the governor's office in New York that was just caught. But Shen Yun, FBI arrested 2 spies trying to bribe the IRS to revoke Shen Yun's nonprofit status. This is real stuff. This is happening. There's a guy they caught in Florida, worked for a telecommunications company that for over 10 years was giving the Ministry of State Security information about Americans, and mostly Falun Gong practitioners. So like, you don't need to make a movie, but none of that gets out. None of that gets in the public consciousness. You mix that with the TikTok stuff. People don't even think about this. They still think like the Russia stuff. And I'm not like a Russia expert, so I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying Hollywood covers it like we're still in that era.
Yeah. It's wild to me. And the more that you're talking about it now, it's so obvious that when like Shen Yun, and the big threat here to China is that you guys talk about what China was and how great it was, and the artistry that was there, and their contributions, and how beautiful it was at some point before the CCP took over and started basically ruining everything.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I can tell you a bit of the origin story of how Shenyun came to be.
Yeah.
I actually got, the historic honor to watch it from the very beginning. It started off with like a Chinese New Year production. Some of these people in Los Angeles and New York were saying, well, it's Chinese New Year. Let's have a Chinese New Year celebration, but let's not have the one that the embassy or the consulate does, which is all this like how wonderful things are under the PRC flag. Let's have something that actually represents Chinese culture. And they did a few of these, and they asked me to MC a couple of them, and I did them back in the early days, and it was a big success. And then around 2006, they said, well, let's do this for real. Let's actually create a company, and we'll train the next generation of dancers, and we'll create this amazing revival of Chinese culture. And the people who did this, right, if you go back to the persecution of Falun Gong, so in 1999, when Falun Gong is being, all of a sudden, overnight, is banned in China, people are being rounded up, tens of thousands of people a day sometimes, hundreds of thousands within the first year, sent to labor camps, sent to prisons. Then their family members go and say, hey, release our family members. They get arrested. And then we start getting death reports, people being tortured and killed. You have people outside of China who also practice Falun Gong. They just, some people did Tai Chi, they did Falun Gong, and they're like, what do we do about this? This is people just like us, or in some cases, it's my mom back home, or it's my relative back home. What do we do? So then nobody, they weren't rebel rousers, they weren't political activists. Said, okay, well, let's make some flyers and tell people. If people just knew what's going on, let's talk to the media. Let's hold a press conference. Hold a press conference. Nobody shows up. Okay, let's talk to the government. Talk to the government. Well, we got a lot of business in China. We support you, but we can't go too far. And this is what was happening for years. You were talking about that earlier. That's what was happening. So they started forming media entities. Some Falun Gong practitioners formed the Epoch Times, New Tang Dynasty Television, Sound of Hope Radio, all these different websites to say, let's get the story of what's happening to Falun Gong in China out to the public. Let's tell people all this other stuff that's happening in China that nobody knows about. We have information like the first SARS that hit in 2003. They were the ones who broke the story to the world. Nobody had that kind of
COVID too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
COVID was Falun Gong practitioners.
They all got deplatformed for what we now accept was actually the story of how it played out. And so around that time, 2004, 5, 6, you have among Falun Gong practitioners, people who were top artists in China who had escaped. Some of them escaped persecution. Some of them survived persecution. Others had just been living overseas, but were practicing Falun Gong. And they were top choreographers, top composers, musicians, and dancers. And they said, well, what can we do with our skill to tell this story? And so that idea is where a lot of this got started. They said, well, let's put together a performance that celebrates real traditional Chinese culture. And we'll do a bunch of different stories, like maybe about 20 stories per show, each about 5 minutes long. And within that, we'll have a couple of dances that talk about what's happening to Falun Gong practitioners in China today. And so the combination of these two things is so scary to the CCP, because first of all, we're showing this persecution that they're claiming does not exist, that they've spent all these resources, your China Watch inserts and your online stuff and deplatforming people and bribing and honey trapping people and not allowing journalists to cover it to lose their visa to China, all this stuff, right? Taking Time magazine off, all this stuff that they do to control the press. And here we are, and we're performing this at the Kennedy Center in front of congressmen, and at Lincoln Center in front of top entrepreneurs, and in LA in front of Hollywood executives. And they tried everything they could to try to stop us. So they're sending letters to theaters to try to cancel the show. They're slashing the tires on our buses, in a very, very dangerous way that can make the driver lose control of the bus. Sending death threats to people, right? But then if you zoom out from that, it's not just the Falun Gong stories, because if you see the billboards, like you said, they're everywhere. It says China before communism. That's what the show is about, showing people, and including Chinese people in many cases, but mostly, everybody around the world, what China once was like. And when people see that, they say, wow, well, Chinese civilization, these stories, they're about these crazy characters like the Monkey King, or this general who gets a tattoo on his back from his mom. But the moral is loyalty and faith and integrity and courage and humility, right? All these different values. And they go, well, that's not Chinese. That's universal. Those are my traditional values too. And so people from different cultures realize how much we have in common with what China used to be, what Chinese civilization actually represented. The China that got me interested in Chinese culture, that we go to movies to watch, the kung fu, the Chinese food, the artwork, this kind of stuff, right? And that's what Shen Yun shows people. And that, I think, at a deeper level is even more terrifying to the Chinese Communist Party that spent, the greater part of a century trying to wipe out this heritage. And here it's being celebrated around the world. And we have Chinese people who come to see the show and they'll say, I haven't seen this stuff since I was a kid. My grandmother told me these stories back when I was a kid, 50 years ago. And I found real Chinese culture outside of China. And they'll send us emails saying, when are you coming to China? We can't wait for you guys to come perform here.
Yeah. It's well, I don't think you'll be performing in China anytime. I don't know. Hopefully there'll be a time when you can go back to China and do it. It is wild just watching that trailer again to get into the performance. Like, how high do some of these? What are they jumping like 12 feet in the air? What is happening?
Crazy.
Yeah, we have pictures and videos of people jumping over each other. So this art form is classical Chinese dance. So it's like ballet in the sense that it's a complete dance system, but it's very different from ballet. In some ways, it's more similar to Chinese martial arts. So actually, a funny thing in Chinese is that the word for martial arts, wu, is the same word as the word for dance, wu. It's written differently, pronounced the same way. And that kind of hints at how these two traditions have a shared origin. So the same, back in the day, if you go 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, the emperor would have these huge banquets at the palace. They'd sit outside at the steps of the palace and have a lot of alcohol and just, a lot of meat and feasts. And they'd have these women dance with these beautiful sleeves. And then the generals would get up because they're drinking and partying, and they'd pick up their sword and spear and they dance for the emperor. And they use the same move that they would use on the battlefield, but now they were dance. And so a lot of the heart and the very essence of classical Chinese dance is tied into that martial arts heritage and kind of evolved at the same time. So the same move that you could use to duck a spear in battle becomes a backflip in classical Chinese dance. And so this whole thing of how high do they jump, how flexible they are. One of the things that we explain in the show that people don't realize is that a lot of the stuff that we call gymnastics or acrobatics or cheerleading flips, their origins are actually from classical Chinese dance. So it was Chinese gymnasts in the 60s who brought out these moves to the Olympic gymnastics. Nobody had seen them before, but they've been around in China for thousands of years and are at the core of classical Chinese dance. So that's a big part of what the show is. And there's also ethnic and folk traditions. So these are different, right? Within China, you have, they say 56 official ethnic groups. So you got the Han majority and 55 other ones, but there's sub-ethnic groups. So you could go on and on with this. And each has its own his history, and sometimes its own language, its own attire, its own dance traditions, its own holidays. So we'll have a couple dances like a Mongolian one or even a Tibetan one. And then you have folk styles. So you have ribbon dances and fan dances and handkerchiefs. And you have the music, which is a whole other thing too.
Yeah, this is wild. So you have 8 touring groups at once. That's why every town I go to, because I travel a lot, I always see Shen Yun advertisements everywhere. That is... It's not exhausting. I'd imagine it's amazing. Like, what is that tour like when you go on the road? Sorry, Ben, we're talking about Shen Yun.
Please do.
What's it like? Because, like you said, you've got a break now, but it just seems like a constant tour for you guys. Is it like what's a normal tour like for like one of the groups?
Right. So, okay, I'll just take you from this part of year right now. Here we are, in the summer, early summer. The choreographers and composers are starting to work on their new dances for next year. So one of Shen Yun's trademarks is an all-new production every year.
That's cool.
So the format of this show is the same, but the costumes are different, the storylines are different, the choreography, music is different. Some of the MC jokes are the same, but we're working on that. Overall, it's a completely new show. So that's what they were doing now. We get into like late summer, early fall. We start doing rehearsals. So you move from choreographer working with dancers to now you got dancers. They've been working on their dance. The musicians have been working on their music. You put them together. Now they're working together, getting their timing right. The conductor's looking at the dancers, timing all the exact moves. You have animated backdrops. I haven't even talked about that. So the dancers actually have to sync with the animated backdrops and they have interaction. I don't want to get into that too much because it's kind of a cool surprise, but they do stuff that we have a patent for. It's really neat. So they work on that. And then we get to actual full dress rehearsals. So I'll come on stage as an MC. My job is to introduce the different pieces. Really briefly, a couple sentences, get out of the way.
You've got the easy job, right?
It's the easy job for sure. I can't dance, can't sing, can't hold the tune on a violin or anything like that. So I just talk. And I have an MC partner who's Chinese, and we come on and we talk about the Monkey King and what's going to happen in this next story, but we don't give away the plot, and we get out of the way, let the dancers do their thing, and come out again. And so then around November, December, we're doing our full tech rehearsals, dress rehearsals. It's a real show. We have at our headquarters, which are in New York, a couple hours outside the city in Orange County, New York. We have our training facilities. We have full large-scale theaters where they're just as good as any theater in the world, and we do all our rehearsals there. And then right around Christmas, everybody gets on their buses, and we just one after another say goodbye to all the companies, and it's about 70, 80 people per group. We got 8 of those. We started back in 2006 with just the one group, and then there was so much demand, and a lot of young people saw this and said, I want to be part of this too. They saw the show and they came and they trained, and they, some of them had dance background, others needed to do more work for a few years. And we had a second company and then a third, and now we have 8. So on tour, typically we'll be in a city like Tampa, let's say, or DC. DC is as long as we'll go is about 2 weeks. Yeah. Usually we're somewhere for just 3 days. So a typical week might be travel Monday. We'll get to the next city on Tuesday, Monday night, set up on Tuesday, perform on Tuesday, another show on Wednesday, travel Thursday, get to another city, set up on Friday, 2 shows Saturday, show Sunday, and then it's get out there and go to the next city. And we'll have days off, and we'll have time at the beach and time at the mall and stuff like that. But we do 100 shows per group, so we do about 800 shows per tour.
Wow.
That's how you get to like 2,000 shows really, really fast. It's the performing arts life, especially for the dancers and the musicians. It's not an easy life. It's not for everybody. You're going to work hard. You're going to have time that you miss home, and you have time that your roommate's snoring is just a little bit too much. That stuff happens. I tell people, around March, April, everybody around you is annoying. So just be ready for that. You've been together. It's kind of like being an athlete. Some days you don't feel so great. You still have to perform. Obviously, if you have an injury, that's a different story. We have processes for that, and we have doctors who take care of them. We've had people who ruptured an Achilles and had to get surgery and stuff like that because it's so athletic, right? But yeah, it's one of the fun things that I really enjoy after a show is going into the lobby and meeting some of the audience members. Sometimes we'll have like a VIP guest or something, and I'll go out to meet them. But don't tell them this, but my favorite part is actually on the way to meeting them, when people spontaneously come up and just tell me how much they love the show. And they'll say random things like, oh, your sound engineer is amazing. Go tell him what a great job he did. Or I really love the Arhu player. Or what about that costume? Like really random things that people pick up. And just because, it's Chinese culture, but again, those values, the virtues, they're so uplifting.
Yeah.
So people come, they expect to learn about Chinese culture. They expect to be entertained. But I think what they don't expect is to be inspired and leave the theater feeling better and with hope. I think people didn't expect that, but they get that every night.
That's very cool. Ben, you've I'm sure seen a bunch of these, a bunch of the performances. Like, what's your favorite part? Do you kind of hang around in the back, and since you're digital outreach, are you like manning the social media for this stuff and like making sure the show? Because like you said, I've never been to a show. I need to go to one of these shows. Shame on me here.
Let's talk later.
We will.
Yeah,
I'd love to cover it when you guys come to town or wherever I am. Like when I'm there, I'd love to do it in person. And I've been doing a segment now for the Daily Signal called "What's in Your Office." So if there's any fun offices, or maybe if the office is on the road while you guys are doing this stuff, I'd love to do something fun with you guys. I think it'd be great. It's got to be like watching a movie, right? For you, Ben, like where like if you're in the movie, like you sit back, you kind of fold your arms in the back, and you watch everybody like really enjoy these shows when you're on the road.
Yeah, so I'm not officially part of Shenyang, but I am like probably a super fan. So I've seen it quite a few times. I would say for me, like I think what people don't get is what scares the CCP. Why is Shenyang so powerful? It really is these values, and that's exactly why we're at odds with the CCP, and we'll never be able to really, right? As America, we just have fundamentally different values. And when you look at classical Chinese culture, those values carried that civilization through 5,000 years. It was those values. It was things like propriety and loyalty and, respect for your elders and, family values, things we really value. And you look at like Falun Gong as a practice too. And it's these values that the Chinese Communist Party is so afraid of. And so that's really like the wholesome part. I have young kids, and I think about a lot about like, how do I raise my kids? And I think probably your viewers too, like, how do I raise my kids with good values? How do we become good humans, whether you have spiritual practice or not? And seeing like Shenyang really brings that out. And there's this super high level of art and entertainment and artistic, and it's funny, and it's for me, a big surprise was classical Chinese dance is so expressive. It's not like ballet. It's so expressive, and you can watch it. And it's just like an instrument and them dancing, and you can know the tone if it's somber from the dance. But the impact of it, I think, is more because and also I think what's so amazing is you talk to these dancers, right? And they practice Falun Gong, and it is a labor of love that like you do not find in modern workplace anymore. Like you don't find in people's. It is really like a renaissance for them. And Alicia, you could talk more to this, but from the little that I know and I've talked with them, like this is their culture. This is a revival of their culture that has been destroyed and is being destroyed. I don't think people understand how motivating that is for people. And then when you see that in them on stage, how motivating that is. Like whereas you could have a high level of art or sport and you'd see that and you'd respect that. I feel Shenyun's way deeper.
Yeah, no, I look at it myself personally when I see this, and you again, it's this American culture thing, right? Everything's so like instant. Everything is so watered down now. There's so much stuff out there to distract us. Part of it's probably part of psyops everywhere and everything you can think of. But traditional dance, are you guys like the most successful? I would say traditional dance or most expansive traditional dance troupe in the country right now, maybe in the world.
Oh, I can tell you for sure that Shenyun is the fastest growing performing arts company in American history. So
Yeah,
we got that, and we did it. It took a lot of effort from everybody, including supporting roles like Ben's and people just in the community at large, helping to talk about some of these things. We did it through a financial recession when all these companies were going bankrupt. We did it through COVID when like the New York Philharmonic dismissed everybody, and we kept everybody on salary. We did it with the CCP, just snapping at our heels the whole time.
yeah,
And still, it's more and more of a success. So Shenyun does not sell tickets. We get invited to perform in different cities by a hosting organization, and we get applications from all these cities we can't get to. 8 companies is not nearly enough. So I think we have all kinds of records. It's quite. I really think I like the labor of love term. I think that's really because it is hard work, and there's no getting around that. But the way that the dancers, the joy that they radiate from stage is not something that can be faked. They do it night after night, and some of these people lost family in China. I mean, we have dancers who have like there's a principal dancer whose mother was jailed while he was in Shenyun. We had an erhu soloist. This is somebody who plays this 2-stringed instrument on stage whose husband was going to come and join her in New York, and he was arrested at the airport in China, sent to jail for 3 years. But you can't tell that by seeing how these people perform. The joy, because they have a mission, they have a purpose, they work together for it. It's driven by faith, by a strong belief in what they're doing, and by hope that this show is helping people, is inspiring people, and by hope that one day it will go back to China. Hopefully we get to see it, but that's what I think drives a lot of people, as well as your usual stuff of wanting to be the best in the world in what you do, which they certainly are.
yeah. Ben, we have a couple of minutes left here. I just want to kind of go through like what should people be paying attention to for I guess the best way to put it is like low key propaganda that comes through from China. I know just manipulation of media in general, but like what are things that like normies like me might overlook?
Yeah, so I think thanks for the question. It's really insidious, number one. So it's hard. It's not easy. I
Yeah.
think when it comes to news stories, like mainstream media news stories, you should be very skeptical. And when you look at those, I would ask yourself, is this like very deceptively flowery behavioral like language, like the New York Times articles on Shenyun, for instance? And is this using like a very small sample size or does this seem like it's statistically viable or whatever? So like kind of take a step back from that, kind of don't get sucked into that. So when you start to see some of that, I would say when you start to see experts talking about China on TV as well, or wherever, you can Google a little bit of that background too, because they might even be a professor at a prominent university. But you start to hear something, you're like, that feels like it rhymes with CCP propaganda. So when you start to get that like tingle feeling, it's like a little bit like, wait a second here. But I can understand too that it's hard for people and that they're busy in their lives. So I think another thing is you could check out our website, faluninfo.net, FALUN-INFO.net. We're always publishing. We have different reports up there now, and you can follow us on social media, kind of just scan, and people can get a sense for like what are the tactics? So we have a couple reports up there now, about the protesters or about kind of how they're doing some of the unrestricted warfare. So that can be helpful for people.
Yeah.
We have social media, we have Twitter. You can follow us there, and people can just stay informed. And I think for people that want to get involved, talk about it. They hopefully they learned a lot today in today's podcast, and like talk about it. Talk about it at dinner parties. Talk about it when people bring up something about China. Oh, do you know about that? And see.
Well, it's crazy because you bring up a very, very good point here, in that you were sounding the alarm. Falun Gong was sounding the alarm in 2002. You're speaking in front of Congress then, and then since then we heard about it. I always get it wrong. The Uyghur Muslims that have then, because it was like they were finished. They did their dirty work, and they still do with Falun Gong, and then they moved on to the next group. And it won't stop there. And I don't think that people understand that it just won't stop. They will continue to, like, it's not even like, it's beyond oppression. They're locking people up and murdering them. Like oppression,
right.
When you hear oppression, I almost feel like it's not a good enough term for it, because oppression is like, I might silence you on social media. They're locking people up and taking their organs.
I mean, and even getting scarier than that, let's talk about America, because what they're doing to Xinjiang or like Falun Gong in general, America, with frivolous lawsuits or media disinformation, that's to silence critics. Just think about it that way. That's just to silence critics. So now, Tim, when you go talk about something China doesn't like, what if you got hit by a lawsuit with an organization that was like, we're anti-Tim Young Association, right? And you're like, wait, that's a weird association. And they end up just being a China front group. And that sounds kind of funny to say, but that's literally what the tactic is. So it really is, the slippery slope argument is true, where it's like, yeah, they'll come for Falun Gong first because, of course, we're the largest group. We have the most information about their human rights abuses. But the totalitarian arm is coming. Like, it's here. And so I think people do need to stand up. It's a collective freedom issue.
Yeah. No, and it's good to sound the alarm. And I'm really glad that I could have you guys on and talk about this. It's again, something that as an American, and you see like the infiltration into our culture and how things have shifted. And how things have rapidly shifted over the past couple of years. But we just don't, as Americans, we can't wrap our heads around what has happened and what is happening, because we don't see it. And then when you have the media who take money from China, they make sure we don't see it. And so again, like when I was first presented Falun Gong, when I first started hearing about the stories, over 20 years ago, it was like, oh, they're a bunch of crazy people that, whatever, nothing's happening. It was happening. And the fact that conversation was even had, and that people didn't just automatically go against the CCP and realize that they were bad people. Like the fact that like the Body Worlds exhibit was able to go through America, and nobody really questioned it the first couple of rounds. Like, hey, where'd the bodies come from? Nobody nobody was even questioning it. It's mind blowing to me. And I fell for that trap a long time ago, and shame on me. And I've learned now, and I really hope that my followers and listeners learn as well, and realize that this stuff is real, and that it's wild what's going on. I'll leave you with this. It's my ask. I really want to do the maybe what's in your office, or when you guys come around, I would love to hang out and get my butt kicked maybe by a couple of people on stage or something,
That sounds like fun. We can arrange that for sure.
Awesome. Please, I'll have my people reach out, and we'll make that happen. And I'd love to help you out more with that stuff. Again, Alicia Lemish, Ben Maloney, two great folks. Ben Maloney, the director of digital outreach for the Falun Gong Information Center, and Alicia Lemish. A difficult name for me. I don't know why.
For everybody.
Listen, I did my research, and I watched some interviews with you beforehand, so I knew how to say the name. Because every freaking interview that you do, they go, am I saying your name right? Am I getting it? Hold on a second. MC for Shenyang. How many of those have you done again? Like 2,000, 3,000? How many of these shows have you done?
About 2,000 shows.
It's all by memory now. They don't shift it up on you at any point that you have to.
Well, because the show is new every year, we have a new script every year. So I gotta wipe out last year's script and get ready for the next one once we write it.
I
don't even know what this next show is going to be. I have to see it first.
That's very cool. I can't wait to see the technology that's involved with it too. That sounds like one heck of a show. And so I want to thank you guys for being here, and we'll reach out and we'll do some more stuff.
I want to thank you, Tim.
Thanks so much.
It's been great to talk about this. I mean, we're up against something very sophisticated. So the more we can understand it, the more equipped we can be to deal with it.
You can tell, by the way, all my listeners, they can tell that it's serious when I'm serious, and I didn't make any jokes at all, basically, through the entire thing. Usually
I was worried, Tim. I watched all your stand-up beforehand, and I was like, oh, am I going to have to try to be funny? I'm not funny like this guy. So
no jokes. No pot shots at anybody. No underhanded humor that I usually take cracks at ex-girlfriends in the middle of this too. Nothing. I was like, it's dead serious today because it's a serious topic. Thank you guys for being here, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Yeah. I want to thank those guys, Alicia Lemish and Ben Maloney, for hanging out with us today. Great stuff happening, and go check out. Let's run it again here. Do I have it? Maybe I don't. Go check out Shenyang when they come to town. Great people, and an interesting story about the cultural heritage of China. So, that being said, let's pay a couple of bills here. I'm actually writing up my review. I watched earlier today. I went to the movie and went to the movies and saw the Superman film. And I just wanted to let you know that Superman sides with Palestine in the film. So in case you're wondering, he saves Palestine from those evil Israelis. In case you're watching the Superman show, get ready. And they let everybody know that he's an alien. So there we go. Here we go. What was this? Here we go. This is a long comment. I'm going to have Lawrence here says, my parents visited China before it was popular with tourists. And performed there for 10 days in Beijing and lived for 6 months. In this time, I typically walked 20 kilometers a day and took free public buses for absolutely nothing, blah, blah, blah. So, okay. All right. Well, there we go. It seemed like a little bit of a propaganda there for China. It's neat. Those guys show up and then you get propaganda for China and the old thing. By the way, something cool happened today. I thought this was neat. Our friends at Kalshi have a commercial, and it's pretty cool. It starts with "Don't bet against Jesus," which I think is really cool. Here's the new Kalshi ad.
If history has taught us anything, it's not to root against the underdog. Right, Peter?
No spoilers.
British are coming! It pays to know what's coming.
Check the group chat!
To chart your own course.
I'm sure that's nothing.
Because the 1 in a million long shot can work. When the whole world picks Goliath, you know it's going to be David. Every great leap began with a bold first step, and there's no shortage of second chances. Against impossible odds, you don't stand down. You swing first.
How cool is that? I think that is probably one of the best predictive market ads I've ever seen in my life. I thought that was such a cool ad. They did not ask me to run that ad for them. I thank them for their sponsorship of the show, obviously, and you'll see me promote them all the time because I love what they do over there. I think it's fun, and Kalshi is usually 100% accurate with what they do with their predictive markets. But that ad, I saw it today, and I asked them to send me a hard copy of it that I could download and then play on the show because I just thought it was so cool. So yeah, I want to thank Kalshi. I want to thank American Beverage Association, and of course Ezra Zion Cigars. We're right there. Go get yourself some Ezra Zion cigars. Let's go ahead and do the old Ezra Zion store. If you guys haven't seen it, let me pull up the. Where we at? Oh, I guess I need to learn how to use my. There you go, Ezra Zion cigars. Bee's Knees Stolen Honey right there. Still, I can't believe you can still get it. I can't believe it's not sold out right now. You should go get that when you can. If you're a big cigar person, you can also join their Cigar and Coffee of the Month Club, and also you can get a pack of the Ezra Zion blending session cigars. I smoke like 3 a day now because I'm on a roll. Really enjoy Ezra Zion cigars, and I want to thank them for sponsoring the show as well. And big news. Next Tuesday, we're going to be doing a special episode, 4 hours live. In Congress, and apparently we're going to have anywhere from 30 to 60 guests in a 4-hour period. Get ready for a marathon of a day. Tim Young in Congress with my team, and some great folks being there, including with me. In case there's a lull, my new co-host Sarah Sansoni is going to be there with me, and she'll probably be hanging out on the show a little bit more as well. Yeah, we're going to have a great time. So next Tuesday, we're going to be in Congress hanging out for their new media day. Very exciting day for me to be there for 4 hours, and should be a hell of a broadcast. I'll tell you that. We're gonna have a lot of people on. It's gonna be a really good time. So looking forward to that with you guys. I want to thank again our sponsors, the American Beverage Association, Kalshi, and Ezra Zion Cigars. And I went to the movies today, and I did not see the Fantastic Four because it's not out yet, but I forgot to turn on the light. That is a ridiculous popcorn bucket. is what that is. That's not just a Galactus head. That's a ridiculous popcorn bucket because I live a ridiculous life. Guys, I want to thank you guys for being here. I want to thank everybody in the chat, except for the Chinese propagandists. Really interesting how they got in there. And I want to thank you guys again for watching every night. Like, share, subscribe. Make sure you hit the retweet button. Glad you're here. I will see you very soon. Coming up from Washington, D.C. We go in next week. Should be a great time. I will talk to you soon. Have fun. I will have a review up tomorrow of the Superman movie. I don't know what they were going for, to be honest with you. I mean, the upside of it, I'll tell you this, is that for the longest time, I've been going to the Cincinnati train station because that's what they used to rip off what is the Hall of Justice in DC cartoons, and they actually used the Cincinnati train station in the film. So good on them for that. But other than that, it was just I don't know. I've got some notes. I'm going to have to write this stuff up here in a minute. So looking forward to bringing you that very, very soon. Thanks for being here, guys, and I will talk to you soon. See you Sunday night, and then next week, special episodes all week long. Should be fun. Talk to you soon. Bye.